Easily the most shocking game, not just from the divisional round of the playoffs, but from probably this entire NFL season, is the Washington Commanders easily handling the Detroit Lions their final loss of the season in their final game of the season. And there's a lot of things that went wrong for Detroit. There's a lot of things that leave you scratching your head about this Detroit game. Easily to begin with is just the fact of how much they were really trying to throw the ball. If you just look at how effectively the Detroit Lions were at running the ball, and take out Jameson Williams' 61-yard rushing touchdown, if you just look at the 21 carries between Gibbs and Montgomery, you have 21 carries for 133 yards, easily over 5 yards an attempt. Comparatively with Washington, I mean, Jaden Daniels had 16 carries for 51 yards. Brian Robinson had 15 carries for 77 yards. And Eckler was in there as well, 6 carries for 47 yards. Between those two, you have 37 carries for a little under 150 yards. And, I mean, much less than the 5 yards per carry that Detroit had. And it's not just throwing the ball, it's throwing the ball in situations that don't make sense. And easily the most obvious one to pick is the Jameson Williams interception. Not only is this an interception on a trick play, not only is it an interception around midfield, it's an interception on 1st and 10. It's an interception where you hand the ball off to Amon-Ra St. Brown, he pitches it back to Jameson Williams, and you're throwing a wheel route to Jahmyr Gibbs. Look, the Lions throughout this entire season have had incredible success on trick plays. And if you are going to pick any team to run a trick play and want it to work, it's the Detroit Lions. But this isn't the regular season against the Chicago Bears anymore. This isn't the regular season against bad football teams that aren't in the playoffs. This is a playoff game against the Washington Commanders team who already beat a team last week when not many people were thinking Washington was even going to be in this position. And when you run a trick play, it's called a trick play for a reason. You're trying to get the defense to basically make a fool of themselves. And this is a defense not only called by Dan Quinn, but you have Bobby Wagner, one of the smartest players in the NFL today, on this team. And you have... Look, man, I just don't think when you're in the position with 12 minutes left in the game, down 10, I know Goff had 3 turnovers at that point. I just don't know if I want the ball in Jameson Williams' hand to really make that decision. Without going much more into it, I don't think that's what I would have called. And not to be like, if I'm calling plays, just to be like, I don't think I would pick that if I'm a Lions fan. I don't think I would want the ball in Jameson Williams' hand to make that decision. It's just a poor play to try to run at that moment in the game. Leaving the offensive struggles aside, because in the passing game, there was a huge struggle. Jared Goff had probably his worst game of the season. And, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Sam Laporta all played a big piece in this game. But other than that, it just was the splashy play for Detroit on offense. But on defense, look, this is the exact struggle that every single person, if you were to predict why the Lions would have lost in the playoffs, every single reason that you would have predicted it came to fruition in this playoff game. Yes, their linebackers are all right with Campbell and Anzalone. And they had 13 and 14 tackles to their names. But there's no pass rusher on this team anymore. There's nobody that you're looking at on the defensive line to say, you know what, on 1st and 10, go get the running back for a 2-yard loss. There's no Aleem McNeil. There's no Aiden Hutchinson. They lost Amik Robertson to what looked like a broken arm on the first drive of the game. So that hurt their passing defense as well. And against Jaden Daniels, they hit him twice. Not sacked. Not anything. They hit him twice. And that's a stat that can be very easily misleading in itself. You know, it just was every single reason why we thought Detroit would struggle in the playoffs. It came to fruition, like I said already. And now you're looking at it. This isn't a disappointing season because you go 15-2. This is the best year of your franchise's history. It's the most wins you've ever had. This is statistically the best season you've ever had. It seemed like that in and of itself apparently was good enough for Detroit. And, you know, I just don't know if they had prepared themselves to have a team that wants to just punch them in the face. They've always been the team trying to punch everybody else in the face. And it's worked up until this point. And it's worked pretty well. But now, like I said, you have a defense. You're going against a defense led by Bobby Wagner, one of the smartest players in the NFL today, one of the smartest players in NFL history. You're going against the defense led by Dan Quinn, who, after he was fired last year from the Cowboys, has his own chip on his shoulder. You're going against an offense with Jaden Daniels, who is easily the Rookie of the Year. If the voting was still going, he would have locked it down even more easily than he had before. And, you know, it's really sad to see for Detroit. It's really great to see for Washington because we need more teams like Washington where we're used to them not really being at this point, and they get back to it. This is their first NFC Conference Championship since 1991. I mean, this is incredible what Washington has done. This is like some of the best football you've seen from a team in a long time, really. I mean, offensively, they're firing on all cylinders with Jaden Daniels. Defensively, they're causing turnovers. Last week in their game, you know, you beat Tampa Bay and you force some of the same mistakes, I think, in my opinion. You don't let them sack you. You don't let many tackles for loss up. You force some turnovers, and you go and see if you can just play better than them. And I don't know what's happened to De'Ami Brown in the last 2 weeks to be the best receiver that Washington has. But, I mean, he's come into his own. Terry McLaurin is obviously the guy he is. But Jaden Daniels, this is the Jaden Daniels story. This is just who's going to figure out how to stop him. We'll see if Philly can do it. I think they could do it. You have interior pressure with Carter and Davis. You have edge pressure with Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith. And you have linebackers like Zach Bond, Oren Burks, a secondary that can probably lock down Washington pretty well. And they're going to be playing in Philly. I would think Philly is probably a much more hostile territory than Detroit was. But it's going to be exciting. It's going to be very exciting. And I mean, I hope Washington wins, I guess, just for the whole story of it all. But Philly probably gets it done. Philly's probably the team to beat going forward. And they're probably the best possible case to keep the Chiefs from winning 3 Super Bowls in a row.